Hello, welcome to the class.
My name is Partho Majumdar.
Without any further delay, let's get started. Now that we have discussed what are SMART objectives, and also we have discussed what are the prerequisites for defining SMART objectives, let us take the next subject. That is, what are the dimensions on which SMART objectives need to be defined? Now, by dimensions, what I mean is that what are the areas of concern for which we should define SMART objectives? Now, this is very important to establish because otherwise, we will end up with having objectives which will not have very big impact on our purpose. We discuss the SMART objectives dimensions for both the corporates as well as for the individuals. Now, this is my own formulation which I have gathered from my experience of over 31 years. However, this can be different for different purposes. One of the things what is the prerequisite is that you must define for yourself what are the areas for which you would require to have SMART objectives and then proceed accordingly. We will discuss here first what are the dimensions for which I feel SMART objectives are required in a corporate world, and then we will discuss what are the SMART objectives required in the personal life. In both the corporate world and in the individual life, we require to have many dimensions on which we require to have objectives. Now, I discuss the most important dimensions that is required for both the corporate world and the individual life. Now, first, we discuss the corporate world dimensions. Now, this is my own formulation and this can vary from other experts. In the corporate world, the first dimension on which we need to have objectives is the business dimension. Now, business is the purpose why we exist in the corporate world. Now, if it's a department which is directly involved in generating business like sales or delivery, it is obvious they will have an objective towards the business dimension. But it is also important that divisions like HR or procurement also have business dimensions so that it is able to fulfill the corporation's requirements. In the modern world, the departments which are considered to be cost centers like procurement or HR should also have business dimensions. Now, HR department, for example, should try to hire at the minimum cost and try to see that the retention is at the maximum so that the cost to the company is minimum. Similarly, a department like procurement could have targets for business like the negotiation targets with the vendors so that the procurement is made at the least possible cost to the company. The second most important dimension in the corporate life is the customers. The customers is the whole purpose why the business exists. So we must have objectives which see to that the customers are maintained and retained and kept happy in the best possible manner. Whatever are the objectives required from the corporation's point of view to keep the customers happy and retained, it is essential to be made as an objective. The third most important dimension which is required in the corporate life is that the dimension of employees. This is often a dimension which is ignored, but this is a very important dimension. If employees are not kept happy, if employees are not kept engaged, if employees are not taken care of, then the corporation can never do well. It is the employees which make or break a corporation. So it is very important to have objectives which see to that the employees are satisfied and employees are taken care of, etc. So in the corporate world, whether it's a whole company or it's just a department, I believe we must have objectives set for ourselves on these three dimensions. That is the dimension of business, dimension of customers, and dimension of employees. Now we discuss the dimensions what we require for setting individual objectives. The first dimension that I feel is required for individual objectives is the dimension of health. Now, by health, I mean both physical health as well as mental health. It is very important for a person to ensure that he is always kept in the top physical form and in the top mental form. For physical form, there needs to be investment in terms of exercising, etc. While for mental health, it is required that the person engages in continuous education, development of self, etc. Personally, I believe that one must invest in his own self in terms of educating himself continuously throughout his life. This is an investment which gets the maximum returns in one's life. In my opinion, the second most important dimension in anyone's personal life is the dimension of wealth. No matter what people say, it is my belief that money is a very important factor in anyone's life. Without money, life can become very difficult to survive. So, one needs to plan money continuously and invest in seeing to that there is sufficient wealth available to him at any point of time. This requires a lot of investment, lot of study, lot of work. So this is a dimension on which everyone needs to make reasonable amount of investment, and that implies that there should be specific objectives at every point of time to meet the life's goals. The third most important dimension in anyone's life is the dimension of family. Now, it is known that in times of need, the people who respond most to your needs is the family. However, nothing in the world comes free. That is a ground rule. So, there needs to be enough investment in the things that matter the most. And family is something which matters most for everyone. So, there needs to be reasonable amount of investment in the family. Now, to be able to invest in the family, you must have objectives which will meet the specific requirements of your investment in the family. So, this is a dimension in which you must have objectives which should be met with meticulous details. The next question which needs answering is that how many objectives should we define for ourselves for a given period of time? When it comes to this question, I believe in the rule of six. The rule of six says that we should have six objectives at any given point of time. If we have less than six objectives, we will not be able to cover all the required dimensions. And if we have more than six objectives, we will have too many objectives to take care of, and thus the chance of failure is very high. So, my suggestion is that we should have at any point of time exactly six number of objectives to be pursued by an individual, whether it is in the corporate world or whether it is in the individual life. We come to the conclusion of our discussion on dimensions on which we have to set our smart objectives. Next, let's go on to discuss how we can set smart objectives for ourselves.